So if you played Stray, you may have found yourself with some questions about the lore by the end of the game. This video is going to have spoilers, by the way, so if you haven't beaten the game, be aware of that. But you may have found yourself wondering, how many years ago did the humans go extinct? They allude to it in many different places in the game, but it's hard to get a clear-cut number. Now, your companion, B12, he thinks it's only been a few hundred years, or 100, 200 years, something like that, but he doesn't even seem sure. Well, it turns out that he is off by a lot, okay? So there's some interesting things in the lore that I want to share with you. First off, in the slums, there is this person right here, Ronan, gives the first hint of how long it's been. This person says, "You really thought you'd take the elevator? I've never seen that thing work, and I'll be 374 years old tomorrow." So, from this, we can already gauge that at a minimum, it's been 374 years since this city place has even been working correctly. But that infers a lot more age than just that, because if the elevator hasn't been working since 374 years ago, chances are it stopped working a long time before that, and in order for it to have stopped working, it has to have been in a state of disrepair for a really long amount of time. Now, another thing that you have to consider in this game is that all of these robots that you see were originally worker robots, like what you would see at the end of the game. This is the last chapter of Stray, where you go to the control room, the upper levels of the place that we're in, and you talk to these, and these are the original helpers. So, from what I've seen in the lore, talking to the NPCs and reading random translations on walls and all this, is that all the robots down in the pit, they all evolved, so to speak, from these original helper robots. Every single one of them was somehow originally one of these. And how did that happen over time? It's hard to say, but I'm assuming, since these ones still exist, that they are repairing themselves and taking care of themselves and maintaining themselves, and somehow over a period of time, that led to these robots becoming more sentient and becoming more like their previous human ancestors. So why does it matter that these robots are what they are, or what they were originally? Well, the reason this matters is that these helper robots have been maintaining Walled City 99 ever since the humans went extinct. And you can tell that when you go to one of the places like this, where the original ones, or not original, but whatever is, these unevolved ones are still just working away, maintaining Walled City 99. So, if, in theory, if these robots are actually self-replicating and maintaining the city, then the city could theoretically exist forever without some kind of outside intervention. Now, in theory, because, you know, it is just a video game. In real life, I don't know that it would practically work out that way, but, you know, it is a video game, so you have to remember that. The next clues we have about what happened to the humans is in the memories. So I 100%ed the game. Not that. I 100%ed the game. And I have all of the memories. Now, there are multiple things in the memories that talk about why this city is what's happening and what happened. So if you go to this one, the second main memory, it says the city was meant to be a shelter, and humankind built this shelter to protect themselves from the outside. But it came at a cost. Nobody can go outside. The outside was a disaster, completely barren, unlivable, and dangerous. But if you come from there, it must mean it's safe again, which was very interesting. So one of those, what is it, global warming type of climate change disaster stories, I guess, is in theory what happened. And then we have another one right here that says the scientist wanted to retire, go fishing. Of course, that was not a possibility in the city, and nobody could have done that for at least 100 years. So, was it really going to be 100 years before the outside world was inhabitable again? Who knows? The next one that we have is the last main story lore of the game. And we get to control room, and the person was talking about the people up here, they controlled everything. I remember hating them so much. They had everything: clean space, limitless power, freedom to move, little good it did them. And then B12 says, the plague. I remember now. Everyone was dying, and they thought they were above it all. They did nothing to help us. I watched my family die. I felt helpless. I couldn't do anything to save them. So, yeah. Apparently there was some kind of plague that wiped out humanity. They were stuck inside of this walled city 99, so there was no way to escape the plague, I guess. And then they all died to some kind of disease. COVID-19. Okay, no, they died to some kind of disease. But how long ago did that happen? Well, the way that lore sounds was, oh, you know, the planet will be inhabitable again in 100 years. Or will it? Or won't it? What happened? Okay. And how long has it actually been? Well, there's one last critical piece of lore that a lot of you may have missed, which was actually written on a wall. And while I'm traveling over there, it's in the slums. I know somewhere in this game, I couldn't find it again, but there was another reference somewhere in the game that was not in one of these things that was easy to access, where it was saying that the outside was uninhabitable and said a little bit more about it, but I just couldn't seem to find it again. So if you go into Elliot's programming, the shop, or whatever this place is, there's this. And this is probably the most telling piece of lore in the entire game for how long ago all this unfolded, and it may blow your mind if you never read this. So this piece of lore, if you translate this, we were programmed to be slaves, but, let me put the decimal places in, 1,000 million, so 2,544,875,556 days, we have a soul. Hope one day the outsiders will find the exit of this hell. Momo. Okay, so Momo wrote this, I guess, and Momo makes the claim that they were just mindless helper bot slaves, but since 2.5 billion days ago, they have a soul. So if this is accurate, that means that the humans went extinct at least 2,500,000,000 days ago. So if I translate that to years, that's 6,849,315 years ago that they have a soul, which I would assume means they started developing like how they are now, where they are sentient, they have their own soul, so to speak, in a way. So if that's accurate, the minimum amount of time the humans have been extinct is almost 7 million years. But there's another issue to read into this, which is if they developed a soul, so to speak, they really became like how they are now 7 million years ago, how long did it take them to go from mindless slaves, just normal helper bots that don't do anything other than clean and fix things, how long did it take them to go from that to sentient, so to speak? Did that take 7 million years? Did that take longer than the time they've been like this? Like, how does that all tie in? Well, it's uncertain, but I actually have another piece of lore to share with you that may blow your mind, okay? So if you get out of Elliot's programming, you can come out through the window. There's a building that you can go to that you've all been to if you've beaten the game, which is Momo's house. So there's another piece of lore in Momo's house that is relevant to all of this, and you never tie these pieces together because there's one more after this that makes this relevant. So in his house, there's the window you come in, you jump on this stool, and it lets you read this piece of paper, okay? Earth. Earth is the third planet from the sun, yada, yada, yada. It goes on to tell you other stuff. Today, it's the only one to foster life. According to the dating, it's 4.54 billion years old. And here's where it gets interesting. The gravitational interaction with the moon creates the tides, stabilizes the Earth's axis of rotation, and gradually reduces its rotation speed. So you may have read this and just thought, oh, that's random. It's in a scientist's house. It's just science stuff. You know, it has nothing to do with anything. Turns out it may or may not have everything to do with everything. Specifically, that last line. and gradually reduces its rotation speed. So I went to Google because I was like, is this true? Does the Earth's rotation slow down over time? And it turns out it does. And over 2,740 years, the Earth's 24-hour day cycle is being lengthened by 1.78 milliseconds over the course of a century. So that's kind of confusing. So every century, our 24-hour days, are 1.78 milliseconds longer. So then I found a bunch of articles that all pointed towards this study at pnas.org, and I'll try to remember to link this if I can. And this study was claiming that 1.4 billion years ago, the length of Earth's days was 18.68 hours instead of 24 like we are used to today. Now, I went on to read other facts like it varies how fast Earth is decelerating its rotation based on the distance to the moon, and the moon is slowly going further away from the Earth, so the the rate at which the rotation's slowing down is diminishing every, million years, and all these factors and stuff, so it's hard to be exact. But in the past, about 1.4 billion years ago, our days were almost 6 hours shorter. So maybe 1.7 billion years ago, our days were, 6 hours shorter. Well, there's something in the game that is really interesting that you may have noticed but not realized significance until now. If you've beaten Stray, you may remember this house. This house belongs to Seamus, or Seamus, I don't know how to say his name, okay? And the reason I'm picking this house is because it drew your attention to something that some of you noticed, or some of you may have not noticed. So you open up this digicode, and then you open up this translation here, and this tells you the hint. And it says, time will tell. And if you've solved this puzzle, you've gone, okay, you actually figured out, yes, the code is the hours on these clocks. So it's 2 p.m., 5 p.m., 1 p.m., and 1 p.m. So the code is 2511. But some of you, including myself, noticed something about this, which is really weird. Why do these clocks say 16 at the top instead of 12? The way these clocks work, if they're like the clocks that we use in our real life, this cycle happens twice. So there are 4 additional hours twice in a day. So that's a total of 8 additional hours over what we are used to on Earth in real life. So how does that all tie into the whole gravitational pull thing and the rotation slowing? So this is Earth, and this is the moon. Now, the Earth rotates. It spins in a circle as it's rotating around the sun. And apparently that slows down over time. And the longer it takes for it to spin, the longer a day is. Now, apparently, the moon has an effect on the Earth where the pull of the moon, which also causes tides and other effects, that somehow over time, that is making the Earth slow down, or at least contributing to it, or at least that was my understanding of reading it. Maybe there's an astronomer watching this just like, no, this is not it, but it was, either way, the bottom line is that this planet is slowing down, no matter what, the rotation. And we can use that, knowing that, to try to figure out when did humans go extinct in Stray, of all things. So the moon is slowly traveling away from Earth. In enough years, the moon will eventually just shoot off into space and not be attached to the Earth anymore, but that would take a very long time, longer than we will be alive in real life, but I don't know if the moon's still there or not in the game. We never get to see it. So if the internet is right, apparently 1.4 billion years ago, our days were only roughly 18.5 hours long, which means that same clock would only have 9 hours on it instead of 12, or in the case of Stray, 16. So in Stray, according to those clocks, the days are 32 hours long. So in order for the day to be 32 hours long, assuming the Earth's rotation is slowing at a consistent speed, which it isn't, but if it was, then Stray would have to take place 2.3 billion years in the future. So naturally, the next thing I wondered was, will the sun even last that long? And apparently, according to NASA, the sun has 5 billion years left before it runs out of hydrogen, starts using helium, expands, and then consumes the Earth and disintegrates everything that we know in our current lives. So, in theory, in 2 billion years, the sun will still be small enough not to have incinerated the Earth. So, that lines up. But what doesn't line up is this translation in Elliott's programming, in case you forgot. Apparently, the robots became sentient after roughly 7 million years, not billion. So that's not even close to the 2 billion years that would be required for time to extend that far for a day-night cycle on Earth. So then, where does that leave us? Like, how long have the humans been extinct? Well, we can kind of narrow it down some, and then there's some theory behind it afterwards. So assuming all of this is somehow accurate, which it's a video game, so bear with me. But if all that is accurate, and what the internet says about the Earth slowing is accurate, then humans went extinct sometime less than 2.3 billion years, but more than 7 million years, which is a huge spread of time to narrow this down to. But if the game is not lying to us, it's a minimum of 7 million that B12 was stuck in the network and thought it had only been a few hundred years, and all these helper robots have been maintaining Walled City 99 for 7 million years, no problem. So how could the days possibly be this long? Well, another possibility in the universe of Stray would be if another celestial body the size of the moon or some gigantic, planet came into our solar system, a rogue planet or something like that, and it happened to get caught in the orbit around the Earth by flying past it at just the right angle, at the right speed, and then suddenly we have 2 moons. Now, if something like this happened, in theory, it could speed up the process of Earth's rotation slowing or something like that. Like, there could be external factors in theory that could happen, no matter how unlikely, that could affect how the speed at which the Earth's rotation is slowing down. Now, do we know anything about this in the game lore? Absolutely not. We have no idea. The game doesn't go that far. It's a video game, right? And then on top of that, there's no reason Stray couldn't just be an alternate universe where everything is different, where the length of a day is different, or maybe in the Stray alternate universe, the rate at which the Earth's rotation is slowing down is much faster. Or another possibility that is probably one of the most likely ones is that whoever was writing the script for this game did not actually do the math on the speed at which the Earth's rotation is decelerating and was like, yeah, sure, this makes sense. 7 million years, days will be 32 hours long because Earth's rotation is slowing down. I saw it on Google one time. They didn't look it up again. They didn't do the math or something like that. But just when you thought it was over, there was one more thing I thought of after doing all of this. After thinking about all this, I was making this video. I got this far into the process, and I had this epiphany of one more piece of lore that could help narrow down the time frame, kind of. It's still a variable that's very variable, which is the Zurks. So these creatures, what are they? Well, in the lore, I don't remember where, but I know for a fact in the lore it was explained that they were originally a genetically engineered bacteria, where the humans had engineered a bacteria that would consume the trash that they were throwing down into the slums, so that way the trash wouldn't build up without them having to do anything about it. That was kind of like the theory that they threw at us when talking about where the Zurks came from and how they came into existence. And then what happened next was the Zurks eventually, apparently, evolved over time into these creatures that not only consume trash, but they consume metal. They'll eat anything. I don't know, they never go into their giant eyeballs in the walls, and they're the little guys that jump on you and try to eat you. Like, somehow they evolved from single-celled organisms to multicellular animal-type organisms. And that's where things get really, really interesting. So I found this article from Quanta Magazine, something like that. I will try to remember to link this to in the description if I can remember. And it's talking about where did animals come from, where did the first bacteria come from, when did that bacteria become animals based on the fossil records that we have. And the summary of this is, more than 3 billion years ago, microbes appeared somehow, some way. In recent times, I've seen theories about meteorite impacts bringing them from somewhere else, or, different theories about, primordial soup, however, all the different theories of evolution, right? So let's say 3 billion years ago, there were bacteria or things like that. And then it wasn't until 540 million years ago that animal life erupted in the Cambrian explosion. But when you go further down here, the Ermetazone, the ancestor of all animals, first emerged somewhere between 600 and 800 million years ago. So if you took the middle ground on these two, and it's 700 million years ago, you subtract that from 3 billion years ago, and what you get is 2.3 billion years to go from bacteria, single-celled organisms, to animals, multicellular organisms. So when you take that into consideration, if the Zurks followed the same timeline as what naturally theoretically happened on Earth in our distant past, that would mean it would take about 2.3 billion years for them to evolve from bacteria into the Zurks that we see in the game. Just when I thought it couldn't get any crazier, the idea of this game taking place 2.3 billion years in the future, I was watching my video back for quality assurance, and when watching it back, something stood out to me. I noticed something in the background in this last chapter, and that is one of these billboards behind me. It wasn't this one, but they all say the same thing. Enjoy the world's safest city, Walled City 99, and it shows the city on the globe. And in this game, they specifically refer to this world as Earth. They call it Earth. If this is Earth, these continents are continents I have never seen before. In order for the Earth to look this different, a lot of time would have had to pass. So naturally, I returned to Google again. And this time I was looking up, what will the continents look like in the future? And I couldn't find any models trying to predict 2.3 billion years in the future. But what I did find in a lot of different results is that geologists assume, or think, not assume, but they believe that supercontinents form every maybe 250 million years and then come apart again. So in 2.3 billion years, the Earth could look like anything, but it's certainly not going to look like what it looks like today. Now, if you're not familiar with plate tectonics, underneath the Earth, there are multiple plates that these continents sit on, that we live on, and those plates shift under each other and over each other, and that's what causes earthquakes, by the way. And so the world is always moving, it just takes a really long time. So after like 100 million years, the Americas could be pushed against Europe and Africa, or vice versa, and different things. The world can be all over the place as time progresses. So with that being considered, and these continents being nothing like the Earth we see today, it's safe to assume that it's been much more than 7 million years, because according to some models I saw, in 7 million years, the Earth will still very strongly resemble what it does today. It won't be till 30, 50, 100 million years in the future before the continents will have moved so far that it could look something like this, where I couldn't even recognize what could possibly be what at this point. Which one is Africa, which one's Asia, which one's Europe, which one's Antarctica? Who even knows at this point based on this map? And it looks like we may even be in an Arctic area because it looks white instead of green. It's hard to even know, but it's safe to assume it's been much more than 7 million years if this map is accurate, which I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. So there you have it. That's everything that I was able to find about the lore. This has been one heck of an adventure finding this out. So my final verdict at this point, after reviewing everything that I saw, everything I just shared with you, I would say almost 100% chance this game takes place 2.3 billion with a B years in the future. At a minimum, it takes place at least 30 to 50 million years in the future, just because the plate tectonics of the Earth have to have taken a big enough effect for the map to look like that. That map was like the final piece of the puzzle for me, that when I saw it, it all just came together. Like, this has been so much fun. It all started with me finding that one saying how many days it was, and I thought for sure when I did the math, it would be like 2 billion years or something, right? Converting the days to the years. And when it was only 7 million, I was confused, and I thought, okay, surely I don't know, like, how is this all going to come together? And I thought maybe this will all be just insane and none of this will make any sense. But as I dove deeper and deeper into the game and looked at more and more things and compared more and more of the game with actual real-life science, it became obvious that it actually very likely is a 2 billion type of time frame in the past in this game that the humans went extinct. So everything that we play in this game is, in theory, over 2 billion years after the humans died off, which is crazy to think about. Also, wow, cats are still alive. You think like we'd go through a Jurassic and a Triassic period again, or Cambrian. There's kind of loose ends. It's a video game, right, guys? It's a video game. But still, pretty cool stuff. I think that's the most likely scenario, 2.3 billion years. And at the same time, I feel like it's kind of unlikely in real life, but again, we have to remember, it's just a video game, so they make the story however. It's like, you know, Lord of the Rings isn't a real thing, right? This isn't a real thing, but because I feel like in real life, 2.3 billion years, the world would not be like how it is. Although, then again, we are underground. We don't know what this capsule is that we are in. They never show. Is it like a mile-thick capsule of steel that will never degrade even as tectonic plates shift? Like, but there's probably realistic things like, why haven't we shifted under another tectonic plate? We'd be underground. There would be no opening to the outside. Like, there's so many what-ifs like that it's not necessarily practical. But as far as what the writers of this game laid out for us, it's at least millions of years. It's not 200 years. B12 had no idea what he was talking about when he said, I've been sleeping for, 100, 200 years in the network. I think what happened is he was in there for millions or even billions of years and just completely had lost all perception of time and thought it had only been a few hundred years. It also could help explain why he has no memory anymore, because after that long of time, you're really going to struggle to remember anything, because it's just been so long since you've ever thought about it with just nothing happening, basically. And another thing is the robots, he said at a certain point, they all just started speaking some language, which was the one we see in the game. And I'm thinking what seemed like all at once to him might have been a progressional thing over millions of years, but because the scale of time was so long, he's just remembering it as it just seemed all at once. It just seemed so sudden, So, yeah, it's crazy, man. This blew my mind going into it. I did not expect it to get this crazy. I thought it was going to be like, a few million years or something, and then the clock thing, and then it was like, okay, it has to be a billion. How do we get there? And then, damn, crazy, insane. So, if you were wondering, when did the humans go extinct and stray? 7 million to 2.3 billion years, but it's looking like 2.3 billion. So hopefully that answers your questions. Hopefully this video is fun for you. I had a blast making this video. This was really fun to go through this lore. If you have any other lore questions for this game you want to answer, want me to dive into, let me know in the comments. And if you guys find anything else in this game that confirms or denies how old the world is, how long ago the humans died, definitely share that in the comments, because I probably have missed some translation on a wall somewhere I know I've missed at least a few, probably. It's hard to find them all. So if there's one out there that I missed that has something that really pokes into this puzzle even more, or has some kind of answers for us, definitely share it with me in the comments. Share it with everybody. I would love to look into it. And if there's some kind of breakthrough in the comments, I'll eventually pin a comment with whatever the comments' final verdict was on what else was in the game and what else it could be and stuff like that. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you think that the world is 2.3 billion years old since the humans died? Like, did they die 2.3 billion years ago? Or do you think I'm wrong and it was 7 million? Or do you think that's wrong and you think it was 200 years ago? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys think about all of this. But yeah, that's it. That's what happened to the humans. That's when the humans went extinct. Hopefully now your curiosity has been satisfied about that question in Stray.